Hello and welcome to Inside Cottonwood. I'm Ron Corbin, your new city manager. And with me this morning, I have two wonderful guests that are long-term employees of the city. I have Chief of Police, Gesell. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And we have our city engineer, Robert Wienecke.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you both for joining me this morning. We've got two big topics coming up. The first we're going to talk about is the new ordinance, the hands-free ordinance that affects our community. And then we're going to have Robert talk about the floodplain and some significant changes that can lead to saving the community some money. So why don't we start with the police chief and talk about the new hands-free ordinance. Can you tell me how we got where we are today?
Sure. Well, if you look at politics in the state of Arizona, as a, I know.
Okay,
All
if
right,
you insist.
let's just
Well,
delve
here
right
we
into
go.
this. Particularly when it pertains to a hands-free ordinance, the state legislature has made many failed attempts at passing any type of legislation that regulates the usage of cell phones in a vehicle. Unlike other states, at last count, there were around 27, I believe, states that have some type of regulatory ordinance that requires, many of those which require use of device using a hands-free, I should say, use of a mobile phone in a vehicle only through a hands-free device. Arizona is not. I think there's been a hue and cry for many years. So what we had in Yavapai County is Supervisor Jack Smith, who is a Yavapai County supervisor, obviously, went down to the legislature last year, spoke before their transportation committee. The committee backed the pleas once again for a statewide law in the state's vehicle code. And yet again, we were foiled again. So Supervisor Smith held true to his promise, and at the county level brought forward I thought it was a very well-crafted version, very balanced version of a piece of legislation for the county, which would not include incorporated cities, that would regulate or mandate the use of a hands-free device. And then from there, other cities, municipalities within Yavapai County over the past, I would say, 6 months, we took a look at their verbiage and we brought those to our respective cities to consider for passage, which the City Council in Cottonwood did just that. So
we've enacted it. Is it in effect currently today?
The City Council passed it on March 7th. It became enforceable. However, the promise that I made during that presentation, it's all about education, and it's new. So we are not planning on any type of enforcement for the next 60 days, or 60 days from the date that it went into effect on March 7th. So we have what we call a public education buffer period, which is 60 days before our officers will be authorized to enforce the ordinance.
Okay, so what does it include? Surely I can't text, but can I dial a phone number? What can I do, and where can I do it in the car with the cell phone?
And that's a great question. Is even this, and I will say that the state, and maybe we can get into that after I answer your question, but the state's piece of legislation that they're considering, even the title, last time I checked on that piece of legislation, had the word texting in it. And it's far more comprehensive than that, and it's essentially hands-free, just like our ordinance is. And I think that it's imperative that the public understand that it's not just texting while driving. It is use of you've got to have a hands-free device to operate your mobile phone while you're driving down the street. So that's essentially the crux of it, is if you're going to use it while your vehicle's in motion, including while you're stopped at lights, you've got to have a hands-free device.
So it sounds like the goal is for us to have our hands on the steering wheel and focused on the road.
That would be ideal, yes. Right. We'd like, obviously everyone can get behind safer streets and reduced collisions and injuries and deaths in 2015. The death toll nationwide is estimated around 3,500, attributed to distracted driving. But I think most people realize it's very, very difficult to truly capture an accurate statistic when it comes to that, because most of it's self-reporting. So the officers would investigate these collisions or fatalities in this case, and that information may or may not make it into that statistic. So we believe that the figure's much higher.
So is it effective? Have you other communities who have implemented these types of ordinances, hands-free ordinances, do they see a reduction in accidents or deaths?
Well, I think that that remains to be seen. I don't know if there's a lot of empirical data on the effectiveness of those ordinances, particularly in this state. I will say that, you know, the theory goes back to you can't legislate. Legislation's not going to prevent some behavior that we're trying to dissuade through these types of ordinances. However, in my opinion, at this point, there should be a consensus that we're at a breaking point in regard to this, and the legislation, I think, pretty much signals a paradigm shift where this is not acceptable. I mean, we've gotten to just insane. I've got a story of driving down the freeway and watching a guy look around, and I'm driving next to him, and I'm like wondering what this guy is going to do, and he literally takes out a recorder and starts playing the recorder and steering with his knees. Oh. So that type of behavior, obviously, we need some type of marker, and in this case, it's an ordinance, and ideally, we hope the state follows through and passes.
Well, this is a good lead into my next question, and that talks about the marker or the event to get us for that shift in a paradigm shift at the state legislature, because as you mentioned earlier in the segment, they have been struggling with passing any statewide legislation for years. So what got them across the finish line, or almost across the finish line now? What got us to this point?
Well, unfortunately, in American politics and a lot of countries, I mean, it's not an anomaly. It takes a tragedy to finally get the political will to take action in certain cases. This one, to me, is mind-boggling that we haven't taken action before. But we had a Salt River police officer, and most people that pay attention to the media saw that the Salt River police officer in the Phoenix metro area was tragically killed on the freeway by just an average citizen, seemingly, from what we can tell, that was texting and crossed several lanes of traffic on the 101 and collided with this young officer and ended his life. So out of something tragic, many times something good, hopefully can save other lives, will come out of that. But we do believe that there is momentum at the state. Last time I checked, the bill, there's several bills that were introduced after that tragic incident, and the most viable version, in my opinion, has made it through their transportation committee, and we expect that it'll become state law. But
let's wait and see.
We're not counting our chickens.
Right.
Yet.
Let's wait for the governor to have it on his desk and sign. So, what do you recommend people do? One of the neat things that I see when I text some people is I get this driving, can't respond right now, I'm driving, sure. Automatic response. Is that what you recommend? Back when I first got into government, I remember a study that said really distracted driving is bad regardless of why you're distracted. Sure. So even if you're hands-free, you can sometimes lose attention on the road. So what do you recommend our citizens do to stay on this side of the law and really on this side of life? I mean, tragedy does happen. There was an accident. You talked about that one. There was another DPS officer killed outside the Yuma region several years ago for a distracted driver kind of thing in a semi. So this is a sad part of our life, and that is so preventable. So what do you recommend people do to not be tempted with having that phone or to have to answer that phone call?
Well, there's a larger cultural issue that I think people need to consider, and that is not only the pervasiveness of electronic devices in our lives now. I mean, they permeate everything we do. You go to a restaurant, you'll see 4 people at a table and they're all at their phone. It's actually, it's pretty sad when we start to think about how much of our attention is devoted to these devices in everyday life. And driving down the road, that's everyday life for a lot of people that are, getting from A to B. And in their mind, that's no different, and we're all guilty of it. I mean, I'm not going to throw stones at glass houses. We've all done it. But I think it needs to start individually, where people start to realize how much influence, how much this has over dividing my attention throughout the day. But particularly in this case, while I'm driving a 2,000-pound vehicle that can easily, within an instant, take a life and change a life forever. So to help people prepare for this one, just consider that. And I think we'll move the pendulum as a society. But beyond that, I think people need to start taking a look at preparing for either these ordinances and hopefully a state law, and getting that device, if you're going to use it while you're driving, get it up off your lap, get it out of the ashtray, buy one of these holders that gets your device up where you would find most of your GPS that are built into your vehicle. And many of these vehicles, I have a car now, some people have those vehicles where it mirrors your phone up higher, right. So at least the distraction is minimized. And like you said, it's still there, right? But at least we've minimized it. And I've been halfway to Albuquerque just talking to someone. Right, we've all done that. Being distracted when I was supposed to be going to Phoenix.
Oops, wrong turn. Well, again, this is Inside Cottonwood, and this is Ron Corbin, your city manager, with the chief and our city engineer. When we come back, I've got a question for the chief about a strategic plan and last year's successes. So join me back in just a few minutes.
Mandalay Homes introduces the new Ion Series, a revolutionary new approach to home building innovation and energy management. Built on a foundation of industry-leading energy efficiency and sustainable building practices, the Ion Series home redefines how we use and manage renewable energy. Contact a Mandalay Home sales executive today to learn more, or visit one of our Ion Series communities throughout northern Arizona.
Not on my watch, they say, as they volunteer to serve, as they move out, stand firm, and take fire. So, not on our watch, we say, to the severely ill or injured veterans who can't get the care they deserve to live full and independent lives. Even when there's no government funding or a nursing home seems like the only option, we won't leave one warrior behind. Not on our watch. Join us at findwwp.org.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. Again, this is Ron Corbin, your city manager. I'm with the Chief of Police and our city engineer. So, Chief, we finished talking about the new city ordinance. It's hands-free. So I encourage all of our citizens to drive without distractions, put the phone up, turn on the I'm driving sign, but regardless, don't get pulled over. And worse than that, don't cause injury or harm to others. Let's go hands-free. So, Chief, here this week, you're going to do a presentation to City Council that talks about last year's successes. We don't have a lot of time, but is there any one or two things that happened over the last year that you're more excited about or more proud of than others?
Well, one of the things you mentioned is we do have a strategic plan, which I'd encourage all of our citizens that have interest go online and go to the police department, and you can find both our current 5-year strategic plan as well as our annual report. So this is the second year. We finished our second year of the strategic plan. We presented an inaugural annual report last year. Second iteration of that this year, where we just don't want to have a strategic plan and have it sit on the shelf and say we've got one, right. Which unfortunately we don't want to fall into that category. But we want to brief the public and our elected officials and obviously our city manager on what we accomplished as part of that plan and what was left unfinished for whatever reason as well.
Well, often finances have something to do with that. The last question I have for you on tomorrow night's presentation is you're putting in for 3 grants is on the agenda coming up. One of them, of particular interest to me, has to do with the signs, the speed limit signs. Post the big numbers there. You know, when I see those signs on the road, I slow down. And there may or may not be a police officer nearby, but I can be going the speed limit and see those signs, and I slow down. It's like this nervousness when you go up to a checkpoint or see a police officer behind you, and you hope the police keeps going when he's got his sirens on. But those signs, I think, could be effective if we get them the grant approved. I think there were 3 put in for them. Is there anything particular of interest to you on those signs, or the reason you're putting in for them?
Well, I think Robert probably be more appropriate for his expertise on the effectiveness of these signs. From me, from a anecdotal observation perspective on effectiveness, I do believe they can be effective. It's how they're deployed, where they're deployed, and how they're set up. Because you've got some of these signs I will see that are calibrated to where even when you're going the speed limit, they'll flash, and that's not providing the stimulus that we need. We want. You
want to scare me?
Not scare is such an intimidating term. I mean, we certainly want to educate people that are exceeding the speed limit and creating a safety issue. But I do believe they can be effective.
You know, I'm looking for them. Well, that's a good segue. Robert, what do you think of those signs?
I think they're good signs. If they're used strategically, like we're planning to do, they'll draw people's attention to them, and that's really what you need. You need to have something that's strategically placed, catches their attention, help change that behavior. There's some signs around the valley that these exist, like at the top of the switchbacks going down in the Cornville, and that one there, it'll flash at you, but people just totally disregard it. So we need to be conscientious of where we put these and how we're going to use them.
Right. Well, I don't ignore that one just yet. I've only been on it a couple of times, so it scared me both times and got me to slow down for those curves, and so I greatly appreciate that. We do periodically get complaints about speeding in our community, and we've had requests for these signs, so it's really, at least my goal, what I'm excited about you guys putting in for the grant is a way for us to find the resources to purchase these signs, and then between the 2 departments, we can get those deployed and help create safer neighborhoods.
Yes, definitely.
So thank you, Chief, for doing that.
Thank you.
So Robert, while we're talking to you, today's topic for you actually is I've always thought a little boring, not that exciting.
Well, we can get Chief a pillow if he needs.
But when it comes to the work that we do, sometimes the things that city government does will actually result in saving citizens money.
Yes.
And this is one of those times where not only is it good for the city, it's also good for the actual community, the business owners.
Sure.
Do you want to tell the community what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, let's start, kind of look back, kind of where this came from.
Okay.
In 2010, Yavapai County went through and did a physical map revision along the Verde River. And when they completed that, it put new floodplain maps in effect for the Old Town area as well as the rest of Cottonwood and even other parts of the Yavapai County itself.
So they got designated to be in a flood zone?
They were in a flood zone before. However, the zone got changed from AE zone, which is areas where you have floodplain and you know what the depths are, the base flood elevation is, to an A zone where it could be anything. We have no idea. We haven't studied it with enough detail to go ahead and find out what that is.
Well, that sounds expensive. I mean, if somebody's got to insure a building and they don't know where the floodplain is or how high or low, I mean, if I was an insurance company, that's just looking for a reason to increase
all
rates.
A matter of trying to mitigate risk, right? So what happens when the risk is higher? You get charged more because there's a chance. So the 2010 revisions went through, and they came into new maps that went effective October 16th of 2015, which basically put all of Old Town in an A zone. Well, moving forward, we've known that there's an A zone. There's a lot of people that are impacted. There's over 200 homes that are actually in the floodplain.
Oh, that is significant.
So it's not like we're talking about 1 or 2. This is definitely something that will have a big impact across the community. So I've worked with Yavapai County Flood Control District and kind of indicated that my goal is to try and get rid of any A zones that we have inside of the city. We have A zones in Old Town, we have A zones along Silver Springs, and we have A zone, actually no, A zone on Railroad Wasp was taken care of. So it's Silver Springs and Old Town. We did a study in 2017. We had Atkins North America out of Phoenix. Actually, they're out of a different part of the nation, but their Phoenix office handled our study. And they went through and did a detailed engineering analysis of the true flood risk and put together a revised map. The revised map got submitted to FEMA in April of 2018, and about 2-3 weeks ago, we got word back from FEMA that they've accepted preliminarily the information contained in that report. And they've published a letter of map revision, which basically takes the Old Town area and takes it from the A zone that we're currently under and proposes an AE zone where we know what the base flood elevations are for the whole area.
So you use the abbreviation FEMA, and,
yes.
and I'm very familiar with that, but that's not a state agency,
no,
right?
FEMA is a federal agency, Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Oh, those
correct.
are the big dogs.
They are the big dogs. So there's a hurricane, they get called in, and all the other wonderful things.
And they designate flood zones, I'm assuming,
yes, they do.
Because of the
correct.
Catastrophes that can be caused
yes,
by
they
flooding.
Do.
And,
yeah.
you know, in the Midwest right now, we have that horrible situation where the snow
right.
and the rain is melting.
Mm-hmm.
And saw pictures earlier today. It just breaks my heart.
Definitely.
So, all right, so we have this new designation.
Yes, we do.
What does that mean, or how do people find out what it means to
So
them?
right now, like I mentioned, it's preliminary.
Okay.
So it's out for a 60-day review period. Yeah, 60 days. So basically, we have until June 29th of this year when the map will become, or the letter of map revision will become effective, and it'll be basically the new floodplain map for Old Town. Right now, it can be contested. People can say, hey, I don't like what this shows. I want you to go back, look at the data, and tell me that it isn't, you know, something's not messed up. So we're trying to go ahead and get through that period. This is all initiated by FEMA. So the comments go to them. They come back to our consultant and say, hey, we have an issue here. Please look at this, kind of clarify it. So we're in that review period right now. Once that review period is over, then the map goes effective, and people can go ahead and say, great, I'm in a new flood zone. I have an insurance renewal coming up. Let me go ahead and contact my insurance agent and say, formerly I was in an A zone, and I was paying this. Now I've moved to an AE zone. We know what the depth of flooding is. Can you re-rate my policy based on the AE tables versus the A tables?
Right.
And that should realize, or the residents should realize some savings because of that.
Again, we're not the insurance company, so
Correct.
no guarantees.
Yes.
But we're working towards reducing, mitigating, at least on paper,
yes.
Their insurance rates, hopefully through a better flood zone rating.
Correct. Yeah. Now that we have a better idea what the risk is, that can be relayed to each individual owner, and they can say, okay, we have this risk. We know it's there. How bad is it? Okay, let's go get rated on and see how that works. So
okay.
Yes.
All right. Well,
you're right. I'm not an insurance agent.
No, me neither. No promises, but it sure is going in the right direction.
Definitely.
So we're getting ready to go to another break. When we come back, Robert, I have one more question for you,
Sure.
and that has to do. What else are we doing? We're not stopping there. We've got some other things in the works to help reduce damage and loss of life and injuries in people living in the flood zone. So
That's
when we
correct.
come back, we'll talk to Robert about what else we're doing for flood zones.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.com.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. Again, this is Ron Corbin, your city manager with the chief of police and our city engineer. Thank you again, gentlemen, for both being here. So, Robert, right before we went to break, we said there was more we could do, or the city was doing, to help mitigate the floodplain. Can you tell us real quick about that?
Sure, definitely. With the study that was done by Atkins, we had them look at a preliminary channel that we could do through Old Town that would take everybody out of the floodplain. So we got good news. They can do it. That's great. However, to do that, it's going to cost money. And well, budget issues, we're looking for money. So FEMA, again, big Fed
the
money,
big guys,
they got money,
lots of money.
Exactly. So they've come through with a grant application period or process. It's hazard mitigation money, and it's a way to go ahead and try to get some funds to take care of it before it becomes a big problem. So we have submitted for 2 different programs. One is pre-disaster mitigation, and the other is hazard mitigation. And we're trying to go ahead and get about $2 million from the feds to go ahead and build the channel through Old Town that would take everybody out of the floodplain.
Oh, that's good news. Do you have an estimated date we might hear? 2020, 2021?
Yeah, maybe 2020 roughly. I think the last round, the applications were submitted in 2017 and they got awarded the end of last year. So you had about 12 months, or 10 to 12 months or so. And again, it's going to be dependent on FEMA schedule because they've got hurricane issues and all the other disasters that come up that kind of set this aside and they have to take care of that. You got it.
All right, well, we've only got a couple minutes left, gentlemen, so I just want to ask you, we just are wrapping up the city strategic plan, and one of the things, the themes that came back up several times was this, on our city logo, on our brand, is the heart of Arizona wine country. So we're getting ready to really push that through the organization, but as leaders in the organization, what does that mean to you? Or even as a citizen, what does the heart of Arizona wine country mean to you?
Well, I think it's a phenomenal brand. With the wine industry comes many benefits to any community that has the unique opportunity to leverage that brand, and we do. We're one of 2 wine regions, if you will, in the state of Arizona. For those that aren't familiar, there's an area down near Wilcox, Sonoyta, and we're the other one up here. And we, out of the revenue that's derived from wine tourism, is around $56 million.
I'm sorry, Chief, $56
$56 million impact to the state of Arizona, according to the last study. And it might be surprising to our viewers that the majority, around 40-something million of that, is driven out of the Verde Valley.
Wow.
So, and I think it's important to understand, it's not just people that are in the wine industry per se, but it's hotels, it's stores, there's a lot of tangential benefits.
So it's not just one group of merchants, one group of business people, it affects the whole region, brings development to that. Well, thank you, Chief. Robert, what about you? What does the heart of Arizona wine country mean to you?
I agree with Chief, but I think it's really an opportunity for Cottonwood to grow and help identify itself very much. From my standpoint, it's a little bit selfish because that means we have to have good infrastructure in place to go ahead and allow people to come in and utilize Cottonwood for these services. So it's a chance for us to help grow Cottonwood in a manner that puts us on the map for the entire state, and that's really where we need to be, even nationally too.
Well, and I think for you, it creates revenue to help pay for those roads that we're so in need of. Well, gentlemen, it has been a great pleasure. This was my first episode.
You did great.
So thank you for being gentle on me and no tricks. I do appreciate that. So again, Chief of Police and our city engineer, thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you.